Okay, so good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone here and on the screen. This evening, we have joined for a talk, for a presentation, and as well as a discussion and Q&A, possibly, together with you. And the topic that I'll present, which you already may see on the screen, and as you have registered, is in the process of building a digital community for displaced artists. So this is the topic of today. Online participants, I would like to remind that you can ask questions all the time. So please write your questions in the chat and I will answer them later. So as we are here, I will start. So first I will present myself. My name is Tautvydas Bokmota. I'm from The Critical. It's a research and design agency. Myself, I'm a researcher, also a project manager, and I was involved in the project and in the research that was done and that I will present today. So, I will begin. So, as you might see, I have changed the slide. So I will begin with this sentence, let's say, statement. So the aim of today is to present the research results of the research that we conducted half a year ago while working with Ukrainian female artists as well as European female artists, as well as doing desk and field research activities. So this will be a thorough presentation, and I will try to emphasize on the key insights and as well as the methodologies. So before I begin, just to explain the process, here you can see the aim which was raised while doing this research, so to explore how digital collaboration can connect and empower European and Ukrainian women artists, enhancing their visibility and fostering creative partnership across borders in post-conflict contexts. This was the aim that we followed, and another thing which I think is important to mention here as well, because it will be repeated a couple of times during the presentation, is the CCC. This abbreviation might not be familiar for you, so I will just explain it briefly because in the project context it's quite important as well as for the research. So Cultural Cooperation Community, or CCC, is a digital platform that supports Ukrainian and European artists through international collaboration in the CCIs, so cultural creative industries, as well as while fostering a sustained community for connection, co-creation, networking, and exploration of opportunities for cultural practice and career development. So briefly saying, what we are trying to create here and sustain in a long period of time is a digital community which would connect displaced artists residing in Ukraine, as some of them were displaced in the country, elsewhere in Europe, as well as to connect them with their peer European artists. So this is the aim of this digital platform, or more broadly saying, community. And we began this journey from the research that I will represent. So we began the research from case study analysis. We thought that it would be necessary to look at what's currently there, to look at some good examples, some practices that could be useful for the development process of this digital community. So good practices. This was the first step, and the aim of this step was to understand the principles and workings, initiatives that are similar in mission to the CCC, so Cultural Cooperation Community, as well as gaining the ideas on effective formats and activities that could be replicated in the present case. So it was important to look at the landscape as it is now when it comes to such platforms as the CCC. We were looking at platforms not only necessarily regarding Ukrainian artists or displaced people, but we looked at different examples that could be beneficial when it comes to developing such a complicated and followed by challenges community, which would be based in a digital environment. So here we identified two groups of cases. Firstly, priority organizations. They were defined as European platforms or initiatives that focused on the promotion of artistic careers of externally displaced female artists or female artists living under the circumstances of war. And also another group which was also analyzed, but which was not a priority, let's say, group, was European platforms promoting the careers of externally displaced females, artists, or externally displaced individuals or people living under the circumstances of a war. So these were the two cohorts of case studies that we analyzed thoroughly following the evaluation criteria, which mainly consisted of scope. We were looking if it's a local initiative, European initiative, or global. Of course, for us, it was more important to look at European scale level initiatives as we are trying to create one. Then we looked at focus areas. This was also really important. If it focuses on specific arts, as visual arts, applied arts, or if it focuses on interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary artists, or connecting different artistic fields. As we are trying not to exclude any artistic fields, we tried to look at initiatives that would try to bring together different artistic and cultural fields. Another evaluation criteria, which was also analyzed, was target groups. We were looking at such target groups as displaced, refugee, or migrant female artists. Another thing which was also important, the type of support offered, as the platform that we are developing is, let's say, based or is striving for structural, psychological, and organizational support that would be, let's say, incorporated into the platform and our target groups would be enriched from. This was also important to look for in the cases that we analyzed. And finally, we also were looking for financial sustainability models because such platforms, such deliverables as this one needs to be sustained in a longer time. So it's important to think of how it can be funded, what kind of alternative funding sources there could be, and what kind of alternative funding sources there are already implemented in similar cases. And finally, another criteria that was analyzed was mechanisms of digital engagement. So here you see a couple of examples of the cases that we analyzed. So we considered good practices those that introduced models of support, collaboration, and empowerment. These were like broad, let's say, selection criteria that we're trying to look for and identify as they could serve as a benchmark for future platform development. So on the right, you can see two platforms that I just provided as examples. So we have Design for Ukraine, and then we have Ukrainian Photographers Organization. And also, besides of these two examples, we analyzed diverse range of organizations, not necessarily connected to Ukraine or Ukrainians, but also coming from different cultural environments and mostly from Europe, but also connecting different artistic cultural fields and different target groups. So what were the key insights? I will just try to summarize the results of the good case study analysis, so I think it's important. So firstly, most organizations, as we have found out, rely primarily on project-based funding. It's a risk because after the funding ends, then we have this dilemma of how to preserve the platform and how to ensure that it's still running and how to ensure that the community is being supported. Because as we identified in our research, the community has some peculiar needs which would be needed to support it through different ways. Mentorship, maybe different funding calls that they are interested. So we need to find a way that the platform would be sustained in a longer period of time. Another aspect which was also important to look at, sponsorship opportunities or earned income from services of products. What are the ways when it comes to alternative funding, what can be learned from different platforms and we can apply maybe to ours. So the financial model model ensures flexibility, but also exposes organizations to funding cycles and resource instability, risks that are typical of the CCI field, cultural creative industry field, where financial structures are often fragmented and precarious. Another insight was that digital tools, which are also, let's say, relevant to us because we are creating a digital platform and we are trying to bring in digital tools that artists could use in their artistic practices. So digital tools are central to maintaining visibility and professional connections. This was something that was shown while doing the analysis. Another thing which was already mentioned briefly is structural and psychological empowerment. So access to material and emotional resources strengthens resilience, for example, through residencies, participatory arts programs, and community co-creation. As we are planning to hold summer schools this summer, these kind of examples showed that they could also help with such causes as psychological empowerment, making connections that could be useful later while applying for different funding or creating projects and so on. So this was a really essential element. Arts-based empowerment also showed that combining artistic creation with emotional healing can significantly strengthen displaced individuals' resilience and support their reintegration. Another insight was that networking opportunities help to build strong professional ecosystems by connecting artists with national and European institutions, especially for the artists who have moved to another country, because it takes time and it takes connections to maneuver in different national systems, so it's important. Cross-border networks not only reduce professional isolation, but also foster the collective resilience and visibility of displaced artists in new cultural contexts. So this is important, especially when it comes to collaboration between different countries, not necessarily of the same nationality, but it's an essential element, let's say. And finally, the last insight is organizational transparency and participatory models. So the degree of transparency and participation varies. There are platforms that have formal governance models, whilst other platforms provide limited information about their internal structures. And increased transparency and participatory governance can further reinforce ownership, sustainability, and strategies for involving target groups. So this was like a brief summary of the case study analysis, but just to summarize it into one sentence, we could see that the analyzed good cases showed that financial resilience, digital empowerment, psychological and structural support, collaborative networks, and participatory governments are key dimensions of effective platforms that support the career recovery and development of people affected by war and similar circumstances. So we see a lot of elements that are needed for such complicated process, let's say, and it's not that easy to bring every one of them because it requires different kind of resources, but I will show you later the current stage of the community that we have, and you can then evaluate if these elements are there or not, and we could have a discussion. Another, let's say, stage of the research, which was quite time-consuming, as it was a longer process, which also required involvement of other organizations, institutions that we collaborate with, was survey. It was an online survey, which was prepared in 2 languages. So one of the languages was English, to involve European artists, and another language was Ukrainian to involve our peer Ukrainian artists. Due to the language barriers, it was chosen to have these 2 languages for the survey, and it helped to ensure that we include Ukrainian artists in the survey. So, and another thing which is also important to mention, that our survey was shared in different countries by different institutions and organizations, which also helped to increase representation of artists from different countries, not necessarily Ukraine or Ukrainians residing in different countries, but also other European artists. So the aim of the survey was to understand the professional and creative practice needs of Ukrainian female artists directly affected by the war in Ukraine and their expectations for CCC. So here we see why it was more relevant for our Ukrainian respondents. And also another aim, which was more, let's say, broad, more universal, was to learn more about other European female artists and their expectations towards the CCC and their preferred ways of participation. We had several themes of questions around which the survey was structured. It was quite lengthy, but it was quite important to explore the backgrounds of our respondents, such as demographic questions. For example, we had several questions around the age, the gender, and different demographic features, which would help to understand what could be our target group of the platform. Another set of questions was about creative and or artistic profiles. So we tried to understand which artistic and cultural fields are represented by our respondents, whereas if there is more potential going towards one artistic field or not necessarily. So this was also important to understand. Another let's say, cohort of questions was experience of being a member of similar organizations. Here, our respondents could be beneficial to us while developing this platform in case they're interested, so they could share these kind of experiences. Also, it's important to know at this stage if anyone would be interested in involvement in the development of such a platform. Another set of questions was on professional and or creative practice needs, and finally expectations for the CCC. So here we tried to understand our audience, their needs, challenges and expectations, more importantly, as they would be the ones benefiting from this output. And then here just a small note on data interpretation. As the sample was comparatively low, it was 111 respondents who have participated in the survey, it's important to note that the sample was relatively similar, and the survey findings were treated more qualitatively rather than quantitatively, and I will present the data later. The data was not generalizable. It was interpreted alongside academic literature, partner discussions of organizations and institutions involved, and other empirical research on Ukrainian artists and creative organizations. This also has have prolonged the process, but for the benefit of it, because due to the small sample, it was not possible to make any qualitative conclusions. Here, another definition which is also important to get acquainted with is the definition of an artist. How did we define an artist while doing the survey? So, as we did not want to decide on which artists we are going for professional artists, for traditional crafts artists, or people who are doing art as a hobby, we decided to use a really broad definition, which was based on Bennett, Lena, and Lindemann work and their ways of defining. And we defined an artist as a person producing or performing creative work or having a less direct relationship with the creative outcomes, such as being in an administrative role, teaching, practicing creative activity as a hobby, and etc. This choice was made and was motivated by an unclear profile of the CCC target audiences. So here we did not want to draw any conclusions before starting the technical development and conceptual development of the CCC. So it was important to be as open as we can and be inclusive towards different artistic, let's say, artists. And our wish was to be open to as many respondents as possible. This was also our, let's say, aim, also to collect a wide range of opinions and experiences of people in the CCIs, so cultural creative industries. So it was important to be inclusive because different artists from different fields with different years of experiences, they could share something valuable that could be used in the development stage. Yeah. So, sample characteristics. As I already mentioned, we had 111 respondents. 88 of them were Ukrainian. So here, Ukrainian definition is based on nationality, citizenship, ethnicity. It was Ukrainians who reside elsewhere or in Ukraine. So these people had some kind of a connection with Ukraine. And then the rest were artists from elsewhere. So for example, there was a cohort of Polish artists, artists from Italy, Norway, and so on. All the respondents, it's important to mention, were female because it was about, the whole research and the CCC is about female and women artists and support needed towards this gender group. The majority of respondents were between the ages of 35 to 50, so of working age, not really young, not, let's say, student age, but a bit older with more years of experience. And as we later saw, all of the respondents have at least 5 years of professional experience. And mostly the respondents were most self-private seminars educated. This was also an important remark to make. So if we would group the Ukrainian respondents, we would see that 38 of them were directly affected by the war and they still live in Ukraine. 27 were indirectly affected and they still live in Ukraine because we have this difference as artists were from different parts of Ukraine and geographically we have different effects. And the last cohort was directly affected who have relocated elsewhere. So this was the, let's say, 3 main groups of respondents when it comes to Ukrainians. And then lastly, we had European artists and creatives representing CCIs. So here, as I already mentioned, they were female, and it's important to note here that this sample was extremely small when it comes to European artists, which creates an imbalance between Ukrainian and European respondents. This could have been due to the choice of languages that we used for survey, because it could have decreased the interest or possibility to fill out the survey, because not all of the languages were represented, just Ukrainian and English. And also, we believe that this difference may suggest differing views of the CCC among the 2 groups, different values it could bring to each of these groups. And as we later analyzed the results, we see that even European artists see that there is more value for Ukrainian artists compared to European artists. So this was also, let's say, an insight and a challenge at the same time that we noticed while analyzing the data. So just some key insights from the survey. As I mentioned, it was quite lengthy, but I will try to emphasize just the main findings. So firstly, practice trajectory and future plans. So on the right, you will see some graphs, so you can take a look at it. So I will just conclude and make the main conclusions. So we see that both externally displaced and residing in Ukraine respondents were mostly engaged in creative activities as hobbies, it's important to emphasize, or they had careers as creators or performers of creative works. So we see a distinction between these 2 groups, and you can also see it in the graph. The graph is made is divided for 2 groups, currently living in Ukraine and currently living abroad, and you see that there are some more differences while analyzing some questions, while there is less while analyzing other questions. But again, I have to mention that the sample here is quite small. After the onset of war, respondents residing in Ukraine turned to more unpaid activities. This was noticed and this was recognized in the survey, while whilst those residing outside of the country mostly balance the unpaid activities with paid practice. Those residing outside of the country also turn to more varied professional activities. So obviously, some of our respondents, after they made this decision to move, they had to change their professional careers because they could not continue something that they were doing in their home country. So they had to make this choice. Another thing which was also interesting, that visual arts were most popular between the Ukrainian artists, while the biggest difference was in the popularity of traditional forms of cultural expression. As we will see later, this mostly manifests among artists who reside in Ukraine, this notion, let's say. But other than that, we see that the highest popularity is when it comes to visual arts, such as painting, sculpture, photography, and so on. When it comes to such arts as audiovisual arts, creative services as architecture, advertising, and so on, we see that we don't have a lot of respondents representing these fields. Another interesting insight is also regarding the visual arts is that it remains the most popular area of creative practices. And in the second place, you will see the traditional forms of cultural expression. But here you see quite a few differences if you compare these two artistic fields, as I already mentioned. So when it comes to visual arts, we see that, we see that traditional arts are more represented in Ukraine, while other arts are represented, let's say, outside of Ukraine more commonly compared to different artistic fields. So here we have this distinction. Different conclusions could be drawn here. Maybe it's not possible to preserve something that you have in your country and to bring it elsewhere, or there is a lack of opportunities, such as, for example, communities are being displaced as an individual, you're abroad and maybe it's harder to connect with your citizens. So there are many challenges which could be related to this traditional forms of cultural expression. With other fields, they're not so tied to home country traditions, let's put it this way. And lastly, regarding this section, it could be stated that the majority reported that they have plans of continuing developing their career further. The data indicates that both local and international prospects are considered. Moving forward, we go to current and past memberships in organizations. This is something beneficial for the development process, and also it's important to understand experiences of our respondents. So we see that we have this distinction between directly affected, currently living abroad, and directly affected, currently living in Ukraine, these two sample groups. We see that only a third of respondents, when it comes to the third group, have been a member of an organization that supports people in the arts or creative industries, while there is a higher number when it comes to people currently living in Ukraine. Approximately half of them been a member of organization that supports people in the arts of creative industries. We see that there are slight differences between the past and the present, so the numbers have dropped when it comes to respondents living abroad, but when it comes to respondents living in Ukraine, it increased by 2. So we see that there are some slight changes, but yeah. Another thing which was also interesting is that whilst those respondents living abroad were less likely to have been or be members of creative organizations, the evaluation of the membership value was similarly high in both groups. So both of the groups, they value this kind of experience, and they also show interest in becoming a member. As we see, it was really positively evaluated, and only just some people either strongly disagreed or don't know. Yeah, And some further explanations regarding the membership experiences is that some participants highlighted that being a leader or founder gave them freedom to implement ideas, direction-setting power, the ability to shape cultural and social agendas. Also, it has offered them a sense of belonging to a creative or professional community, emotional support and mutual inspiration, new acquaintances, and the opportunity to meet inspiring people. Also, our respondents emphasized professional growth through artistic involvement. This is something that was really emphasized, the need for professional growth, as some of our respondents, they lack these opportunities, especially after relocating to a different country. Another thing which was emphasized is that access to project is the opportunity to access projects, exhibitions, and public platforms. For artists, it's important not only to collaborate, but also to promote their work. So they see this as a great opportunity to continue their artistic work through promotion, visibility, and collaboration. Also, as I already mentioned, it enhances career visibility and credentials. And lastly, it provides an access to grant support, funding opportunities, and resource sharing. And in the last section, we also saw that respondents described how membership connected their creative practice with social and civic goals. This was something that was also emphasized, so they don't only see it as a continuation in their professional field, but they also see a big social value. So it helps to support internally displaced artists. It helps to organize charity events for the armed forces, and also another aspect is volunteering and contributing to broader social needs. Some people would like to continue their volunteering, so now they do this for their own communities because they see the need for it. Career support needs, as it was already mentioned, it was a separate section, a distinct section in the questionnaire. So we saw that respondents currently living in Ukraine were mostly challenged by the difficulties of establishing professional relationships in the creative fields and starting collaborations. Most of them did not have the opportunity to continue something that they were doing home, so they had to find a new professional pathway. And also financial problems which were followed by that, because they cannot do something as their let's say, as their job. So they can't do it as a hobby, as something on the side when they relocate, but they cannot support their needs while doing this professionally. And same top 3 issues were listed as most relevant for CCC to provide support with, as you see on the right. And then some additional needs were also named in the open-ended questions. So we see that many mentioned that they feel stuck or limited by outdated methods or lack of knowledge. So this is something important to keep in mind while providing different opportunities. So they have expressed a need for workshops, legal expertise, sales skills, and business know-how, desire for artistic mentoring, and expert guidance to break into new fields. We also see that artists seek support in promoting their works to local and international audiences, opportunities to exhibit, publish, and sell creative outputs, and help with branding, marketing, and scaling outreach. So there's a lot of value when it comes to support. And lastly, beyond one of help, many highlight sustainable multi-year partnerships with organizations, funders, or institutions, stable foundations for growth, scaling, and adaptation. Also, another thing which was noticed, that those living abroad were dealing with a different set of challenges. This was quite clear while analyzing the survey data, that we have different sets of challenges when it comes to different groups that were identified in the beginning. Whilst financial problems were prevalent, the respondents were also struggling with starting their entrepreneurial activity and limits of the refugee identity. So this was also noticed in this cohort of the sample. Nonetheless, the assistance that was expected from the CCC was related to a different set of problems. Here, similarly to respondents living in Ukraine, Ukrainian artists were expecting assistance with networking, collaborating, and establishing friendly and formal relationships. This was mostly connected to their expressed needs. And some additional needs were connected to financial opportunities. This was the most dominant and urgent theme. So they mentioned that there is a lack of stable income from art to support themselves and their children. There is a need for guidance on applying for grants, funding, and residences, especially when you relocate and you are not familiar with the national system of different funding opportunities and schemes in cultural and artistic field. Also was noticed that artists struggle with lack of knowledge or resource to promote their work, difficulty building a client base or customer outreach, not knowing where or how to present their work internationally. And also many experiences feeling isolated, they feel a lack of local networks and like-minded communities, and difficulty finding collaborators in a foreign country. This was connected to language barriers which persist, and sometimes they cause this problem of not being able to connect to peer artists, or lack of time, as they could not continue doing artistic or cultural work professionally, and different sets of reasons. Additional expectations for their organization. This was a separate section which was very beneficial. So here we tried to understand what are they expecting from the CCC. So there were sets of questions given around different themes that they would be interested, different opportunities, different resources, and so on. So here you have two graphs. Also, this distinction was made between living abroad and living in Ukraine, as there are some differences. So we see that there is a higher level of interest when it comes to networking with representatives of the European creative industries and practices of interdisciplinary cooperation in the field of creative industries at the European level, compared to digital opportunities, digital technologies, artificial intelligence, and similar topics, as we see that the number of people who said that it would be relevant dropped, as, let's say, for example, when it comes to use of digital technologies, we see that 8 people think it's little relevant. So there is this difference when it comes. So more respondents, it could be stated that they see more value in networking and different international collaboration, compared to learning about different digital technologies and digital tools that could be applied in their artistic fields. And quite similarly, this could be seen while analyzing the data from people who are living in Ukraine. So this was a trend that was relevant for both of the groups. Another question was about the decision-making process, if they would be interested in being involved in it. So we see that there is a higher interest in being involved from the people living abroad. Sorry, I'm mixing it up. From the people living in Ukraine, there is a higher interest of being involved compared to people living abroad. This was mainly related to scarce time or let's say conflicting activities, as they could not do arts as a professional pathway. They had to do something else, and this could not be connected to their professional work. So this was more of a challenge for them to continue with. And finally, the last section from the survey was about European artists' expectations for the CCC and potential co-creation scenarios. This was the very last section, so I just summarized it in bullet points. So we see that joint exhibitions and art events was the most frequent collaboration type that European artists saw together with Ukrainian respondents. They see more potential in collaborating in such formats. They emphasized not only group exhibitions or joint events, but also opportunities to present work alongside others, so promotion and visibility of their work, and maybe they could promote it together in some ways. Another value was connected to masterclasses, workshops, and experience exchange, so organizing or participating in masterclasses, thematic festivals, educational projects, cross-disciplinary workshops, and exchanging experiences between curators, teachers, cultural managers, and artists. Another thing is that respondents showed enthusiasm for working across fields and strong interest in international residences, tours, exchange programs. This is a good ground to meet and connect. So there is also high potential, especially when thinking of our summer schools, which will take place in summer. So this is a great, let's say, format to connect. Another aspect is cross-cultural cooperation with artists, museums, curators, and institutions abroad. So here we are talking not only about individual artists, but about also involved institutions and organizations. And finally, Erasmus Plus youth exchanges was also mentioned as a separate thing, or similar mobility projects that could be a good ground to meet and connect. Also, there is an interest in projects addressing social issues, creating educational or social products, and also volunteering and initiatives aimed at uniting communities. So this was also mentioned. To sum it up, the section about European artists, it could be stated that European artists are interested in supporting Ukrainian artists with joint activities. They also expect these activities to generate value for themselves. This was something emphasized. In this sense, they do not see their role as purely supportive. The interests of European artists do overlap with the needs of Ukrainian artists in several areas, particularly in relation to interdisciplinary or international collaboration, as well as socially oriented and community-based projects, as well as volunteering. And with this, I'm ending the section on the survey. As you see, there was a lot of data, but also we could have had more respondents. So following that, we had several events who were planned. So firstly, we had a co-design session with representatives, organizations, and institutions involved. So here the aim was not only to present the results of the survey, which was nice and interesting and insightful, but also to discuss them in light of the empirical insights. The outcomes of these discussions informed the CCC conceptualization process. Later, smaller scale consultations with partners were held to ensure that the CCC conceptualization remained aligned with their insights. This was important to ensure, as different responsibilities are shared within the consortium. So as some partners are responsible for the technical development, it was important to inform them as soon as possible on the expectations for the CCC when it comes to our respondents. As we had this sample surveyed, we have not generated but collected some insightful information which would be useful for the technical development. So here we had teams of questions which were discussed, mainly 4 target groups and their definition. Who is the main target group we are going for with this digital community? Are there several of them, or we are just, let's say, focusing on one of them? Because we saw this distinction while doing the survey. So this was important to discuss and check with representatives of other organizations and institutions. Another theme of questions was networking approach, promoted practices, and scope of activities. We had to evaluate which activities are going to be tailored to which groups, what kind of activities will be planned and organized, what kind of resources will be there on the platform, which would be accessed directly on the platform or promoted directly on the platform. So this topic. Also governance structure, how it will be organized, while involving external parties as the members of the CCC, or while mostly basing the work and the decision-making process on the consortium. So this was also needed to discuss, as we saw several approaches when it comes to this topic. And lastly, conditions for long-term sustainability. How we will ensure that this digital platform, this digital community will be preserved in a longer time than just planned 5 years. And then key insights from this discussion were mostly grouped in 3 groups. So it could be stated that the CCC should focus primarily on Ukrainian female artists, while also involving European artists, cultural organizations, institutions, businesses, and other relevant actors. The need to distinguish between core beneficiaries and wider support groups with visibility, networking, and knowledge sharing identified as key priorities was emphasized. Another conclusion was made that the CCC should combine informal community building with more structured professional support, as this was something noticed in the survey, and also analyzing good cases. Both networking and expert-led activities are seen as important, as was a balance between paid and reciprocal forms of engagement. A model that connects local and European dimensions with particular value based on transnational collaboration was supported. And lastly, regarding governance, sustainability, and decision-making, the conclusion was made that a hybrid governance model was preferred, combining clear coordination with meaningful member involvement, the importance of transparency, defined roles and participatory mechanisms such as moderators or advisory groups or community manager was highlighted. And regarding the sustainability, it was seen as dependent on the CCC ability to create clear value, maintain member engagement throughout the time, not only in the beginning, but also to ensure that members are involved actively, and build on existing networks, partnerships, and strong institutional links. And lastly, the last stage of the research activities was a bit different, but also closely connected to it. It was networking events. So we had 2 of them, mostly with Ukrainian artists. One cohort of the event was represented by individual Ukrainian artists, and the second one was representatives of different cultural and artistic organizations and institutions. So we had the representatives of them. And in the first group, it was more like artist school, self-practice, different arts from different areas. So here the aim was to help potential CCC members, as we saw that they could be the members or maybe something else, because we had different roles defined, to connect and begin forming a community and to deepen understanding of their needs and expectations. As in the survey, we saw that there are different needs identified. We wanted to double check it and to discuss it further with people who were invited to these networking sessions. So we had 4 teams of questions. So motivations for joining the CCC, expected support from the CCC, so it's clearly connected to the expectations from the survey, so it was a good ground to have this discussion after presenting the results. Potential contributions to the CCC ecosystem, how every member could potentially contribute to the CCC, and not only European artists. This was also an important topic to discuss. How do they see their roles? And lastly, visions for collaboration with European CCI representatives. This had to be discussed because in the networking events, mainly Ukrainian respondents, Ukrainian members were represented. So we had to discuss this topic, as this was one of the challenges, let's say, to involve, let's say, more actively our European artists. As I mentioned, we had 2 groups, individually practicing artists and creatives. So we had 20 of them. They were Ukrainian, currently living in Ukraine, or displaced. They were mostly professionals with 5 years or more experience. For the majority, creative activity is a source of income. And then another group was representatives of 5 organizations approximately. Some of them were representing a couple organizations, so they were Ukrainian, operating in Ukraine or abroad, and they were either are members of the CCI or actively target this field. So here it's important to note that the sessions were open to both Ukrainian and European artists and organizations. The fact that only Ukrainian artists and CCI entities participated was not intentional, but may indicate how European target groups currently view the CCC. So this was again noticed in the process, not only while conducting the survey, but also organizing networking events, that European artists, either they see the CCC as more valuable to the Ukrainian artists and not so valuable to them, or they misinterpret something. So it was also important to understand why there is a lower interest coming from this target group. And key insights from the sessions is that knowledge, competences, and experience related to their creative fields emerge as the main contribution Ukrainian artists could offer, suggesting that their professional expertise is both well-developed and seen as valuable to share with others. So this was also something discussed in different contexts of different countries, how they can contribute. Some artists also positioned themselves as potential CCC ambassadors, so it would help to promote and attract future members by supporting community building activities in their own cities, such as organizing gatherings and training sessions using their own resources. It's important to have these kind of people who would bring not only their networks, but who would also share knowledge and experiences and expertise. So these people are highly welcomed. And lastly, the findings confirm a clear need for the CCC and support its participatory model. This was also emphasized in the discussions. Ukrainian artists expressed strong interest in networking, visibility, and professional support, while European artists also showed interest in collaboration. And now we go to the last section, which is going to be more about where we currently are with the digital community and digital place. So I will present some activities, some resources of the CCC and main core functions. So this technical and conceptual development was made in accordance with the research that we had conducted previously. So it was important to take into account all these insights that I have presented, and now you can compare. Again, let's take a look at some numbers. Firstly, we looked at the number of respondents in the survey. Now we're looking at the numbers of how many artists, organizations, and projects we have on the platform. It's a continuous process, as the platform is not even running for a year. Currently, we have 208 artists who have joined the platform. We have different countries represented, different nationalities. So we have quite a big group of artists. I have to mention here that the survey, as the initial step, it was a good way to connect with artists. So it helped to bring them. Also, we have organizations. So this is a different section, a different group. We have 31 organizations which are represented, mostly from Ukraine, but also elsewhere in Europe. And then also we have 34 projects which were brought by our artists or representatives of organizations. Some of these projects have already begun. They have like a small group of people, let's say 5, 7, that are working on common ideas. Some of them are only starting. So also it's quite a long and lengthy process to connect people through ideas of collaboration. So as I mentioned, organizations, here I just put some examples just to understand the landscape of organizations. So here we have national museums, such as National Museum of Decorative Arts of Ukraine. We have also smaller museums as Galagan Art Museum, so not only national museums. Then we have small NGOs as Ukrainian Cultural Space, and then we have some international organizations, Ukrainian International Ballet. This is just an example. So what the CCC does, this is just very broadly core functions. It builds connections, strengthens collaboration, supports careers, develops skills, promotes artistic work, and creates shared value. And now I will present each of this aspect separately. So firstly, our CCC helps to create educational and professional development opportunities. Talking about this, firstly, we have online training courses. There will be 2 of them. One of them, even though some artists were not feeling interested in digital platforms and digital tools and AI, this is going to be one of the topics that will be covered by the digitization online training course, as it will introduce AI tools and platforms for artistic creation and experimentation. This is something quite innovative, and artists haven't yet explored this opportunity, so it will be beneficial. And another course will be called shortly Internalization. It's about key EU funding programs, EU priorities, and their integration into artistic practices, something that our target groups felt the need to explore and they were not familiar. And also how to cooperate on different platforms and so on. So we have these 2 distinct courses with different aims and objectives. Besides of the online training courses, which will be asynchronous online courses of 6 hours long each, we have mentorship. So we have community members, which are more than members. They're ambassadors and mentors, and they will assist our members when it comes to different topics, interests, and needs. So currently we have several of them. And then we also have summer schools when it comes to educational and professional development opportunities. As I mentioned, these will be organized this summer, Poland, Lithuania. These will be the core countries. On the right, just put some visuals to look at. So here we have our ambassadors. This is also important to mention because these are the people who are promoting the CCC through their network. So they represent different artistic and cultural fields, and they are doing this work within their networks. And then we also have artists. So it's a long list, you can scroll and scroll, of artists who have joined the CCC. As you join the CCC, you're granted the opportunity to collaborate with other artists. You can explore their profiles. You can start working on the projects. You can join the projects which already began. You can connect mentors and join other activities which are being organized on the CCC or which are being promoted through the CCC, because it also helps to do that. So yeah, what else do we have? The CCC also helps to facilitate networking opportunities aimed at cross-border collaborations and cultural exchanges. So for example, the museum that is involved had organized a holiday season concert by choral Ukrainian and Polish holiday songs. So this helped to connect Polish and Ukrainian artists, as there is a big, let's say, population of Ukrainian displaced artists in Poland. This was a good place to get connected, as it was organized, I believe, in Krakow. Then we also have different opportunities which we promote, but which are not being organized by partner institutions, organizations, such as international pitching and matchmaking with organizations from France or Arte Laguna, Pise. So we try to bring in different opportunities that could be relevant for our artists. We also try to ensure that this would be translated into Ukrainian, that different let's say, groups on the CCC would be able to explore it. Yeah, then we also have projects. As already mentioned, we have projects. These are just some examples. So for example, at the top, you have a project called Я художница, which means I'm an artist. It has 7 members, and then we have Cutout College Art Project, which has members. So we have these different projects which connect different artists, and they have started working together, and you can also join the project. And also we have online matchmaking sessions organized. So this also helps to connect based on your artistic field that you represent, based on different countries and so on. So it's a good place to get connected and to build resilient and reciprocal relationships. Yeah, as it was also emphasized, in the research, visibility and promotion is also important. So we are trying to bring in the art of our artists and also support professional integration in cultural markets. So we ourselves organize some events, but then also we promote some of the events that could be relevant for our CCC members. And then lastly, this is more like a rhetorical question. Where does the process end? In this case, it almost never ends because it's a long process. But yeah, so just to sum it up, the CCC, what is it about? I think it's important to understand because I have presented quite a lot of information. So what is the mission of it? The mission is, as a digital community, it fosters collaboration and inclusivity with a particular focus on strengthening Ukrainian female artists and connecting them with a wider network of cultural professionals. This is something that could sum up the idea, the concept of the CCC. And when talking about strategic aims, it promotes professional development, education, networking, and international collaboration, while also it helps to increase visibility, empowerment, and meaningful cultural exchange across Europe. So this is the core idea of the CCC that we are still working on, as it's a lengthy process. Something that I have presented now, the results of the research and the CCC core functions is coming from today, but in the next year or in several years, it might change according to the needs and expectations from the growing CCC community. So yeah, I'd like to invite you all to join the CCC if you haven't joined it yet, to discover what kind of opportunities there are and to connect with its members, because we have a growing member community. So it's a good ground to connect. And as the last words, I'd like to say thank you, дякую, and Govrev Magat. I think that's Irish. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Maybe you have some questions.
Can I ask one in the room? Possibly slightly tangential to what you were looking at, but in a different life, with a radio program, we were interviewing a Ukrainian author, a man, not a woman, and an author. Not sure if authors are artists, but he expressed that his artistic practice, his writing had changed due to the conflict. He no longer wrote fiction, he wrote non-fiction. I just wondered, did you pick up, were there changes of people's artistic practice, and were they looking for support with that change of practice because of, I think, probably due to displacement, due to mental health, due to just what they were seeing in the news? It changed their art, and I kind of wonder, is that something that the network would be part of or would be needing support?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Indeed, what we have noticed, some of the artists, they have changed not necessarily maybe the topic of the art or the field, but the format. They started to organize more group activities like art sessions, also art therapy. It was one of the fields that some of our respondents explored because of the things that are going on in their country. So these kind of different formats or art therapy helped them to cope with the current events, and also helped to connect with artists or just people who are in the same situation as they are. So living in the current day and age when the war hasn't stopped, hopefully it will stop soon, people are looking for alternatives, not necessarily how to continue their professional artistic work, but how to help their communities and how to maybe do something different because of the need that they feel. And they feel this need not only internally from themselves, but also from people that surround them, their families and community members. So yeah, there has been a change. I cannot present you statistics, but we have noticed, and some of the respondents, we have met them, they have shared it with us. So these community events, and also talking about traditional forms of arts, this is also a good ground to connect with your community. Let's say you have like singing sessions, you have like different traditional arts. This is a great way to connect and to have discussions around the place you are coming from. So yeah, but yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Okay, as we are almost out of time, we only have 4 minutes. I will conclude this talk, and I would like to thank you all for participating in this talk. I hope that you have learned something new about the community that we are trying to build of displaced artists. This is quite a big goal and quite complicated, and it's a long journey and we're in the middle of it, I would say, but hopefully this journey will be continued with new members. Maybe you will join, maybe other people that you will share with, so please share the message. Maybe you know some artists, so it would be important to share this message because the community is still growing, it's forming, so we are on the way. So yeah, thank you for joining and have a nice evening.